Garden Hill is, because that way, if there's an interconnection, you don't need any altitude valves or anything like that to make to allow the interconnection. But our wells are located out here. We've done numerous tests on them. Like you had asked, this is the one that was borrowed during the drought condition. And basically, our other alternatives we had looked at is we had a tower on site that was going to have to set up very large pumping systems to pump up to all this other areas. So there were several different alternatives looked at, and Dennis had brought this one up, which I had indicated to him we had researched once before. So basically what we need is, we're presenting what has to be tackled by the town board for us to even proceed into looking at this as an alternative. Because if we can't have permission to do these items, it's really not a viable alternative. It is from an engineering standpoint, it's the right alternative.
Oh, sure.
But we have run into so much problems before.
I think where some of the confusion may stem from the board's perspective is that these interconnections that we refer to were recommended and even initiated, if you will, by Riddick Associates, being our engineers. And they recommended to the applicant, although I'm sure your input also, that it was probably the best alternative. And somehow, as Dennis Lindsay told me recently, he did not think it was an agenda item to prep and or advise, consult with, conference with this board so that you would understand the mechanics of this.
Well, I understand the mechanics, and that sounds like a great idea. I just want to know why, if I knew why the last time it was not approved, then I said, well, there may be 5 reasons why the prior board said, no, we're not going to do that.
Well, if there were prior reasons, Lindsay assures me that they no longer exist, that this is the recommended procedure.
Right. This would be the selected alternative.
Well, you have 2 tanks adjacent to each other versus being down here with a pump or this or that. I mean, you've got perfect... from an engineering perspective, same height, so forth and so on, for the flow of the water. I mean,
you don't need a pump station, right? That's
basically what we'll do is pump the treated water up to the top, and what it does is it reduces the pumping requirements during a fire event or anything like that, because we'll store enough water up here for a 2-hour fire event. And so that, it's actually from both an economical and a operational standpoint, it's a better system.
Do we have a letter from Dennis saying...
You have a memo in front of you at the present time. You can offer it today.
Memo there.
Yeah.
I just, actually, Dennis, I called him today because he was unaware that it was on the agenda for tonight.
Correct.
And although he has been reviewing it and has been involved with it, I think could just shoot a little something off that, that you are in favor of this alternative, and that's what you have before you tonight. A couple other things that are nice about this proposal is, right now, the folks in...
If I can interrupt, just give them time to read that memo. I think it'll be more clear.
Yeah.
Just one brief.
Dennis, is there anything with the Hills of Goshen, or whatever that's called, Hills of Goshen, subdivision, we have the easement, this and that.
Correct.
Are there anything we've got to consider relative to that subdivision or Arcadia Hills from a negative perspective?
The location of additional tank.
Beyond that?
Yeah, no, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I was involved with the Hills of Goshen also, and that one of the reasons that this...
Thank God you're involved.
This easement was left there.
Right.
Because if this ever occurred in the future, either tapping into this tank or putting up a new tank, and if there was ever water, brought down through here, that easement existed. The nice thing about this alternative is these people now get fire protection.
Oh, sure. I mean, it's a win-win-win. That's why I was asking the question, going back years ago, why did someone say no to
a different
political climate?
What was the political reason that they used?
Yeah.
It's hard to articulate real words.
You talk stupidity.
There has to be some negative feedback.
No, that's all I can tell you.
No, there has to be negative feedback. I mean, there had to be
some rationale
for denying it. Otherwise, we would be in court.
Not necessarily.
Or whatever.
Not necessarily.
I have a lot of confidence.
Always go to court when we don't disagree.
Okay.
I have a lot of confidence in
Sometimes, but not always.
I have a lot of confidence in Critic Associates and Dennis Lindsay, and what you present there seems so obvious. Why would anybody be against it?
It is a pretty obvious.
But I wasn't here back when for the conversation, so in the back of my mind, gee, we agree with it. Then all of a sudden, 3 months hence, someone will say, well, boy, you shouldn't have done that for 3 years.
Well, there was no reason. It was just a negative.
There has to be a downside to something. There was downside.
There's a downside to everything.
Well, okay, all right. What's the downside to that
Neil.
thing then?
So I understand. During the public hearings at the planning board.
You gotta get the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
State your name, please. I mean, during all public hearings where there's an existing subdivision, the neighbors will come out and always have a concern.
What is their concern?
Their concern is that they're going to have to supply water to this new development.
No, they're going to have fire protection. The water's going to come from.
I'm not disagreeing with you at all. In fact, I think this makes wonderful sense. Obviously, the planning board thinks so too. However, that's one of the things you do here at public hearings.
Well, but they don't understand what it is that's going to happen. You explain it to them, and all reasonable people will say, well, that seems reasonable to me.
You're making assumptions about it all.
Okay. Do you have anything else to add?
That is what we really have heard, and I wouldn't be surprised if in the past that was the reason why the town board would not want to vote for it. It's politically unsavory sometimes.
Yeah,
That's what I want to, what I'm interested in is what happened at the public hearing. If there was a public hearing and it was voted down, some dialogue must have been, there must have been.
We don't need a public hearing.
No.
We just make a motion, do it by motion.
I'm talking about.
I know about two different conversations.
Yeah.
You could do this by resolution.
I understand, but I'm just still trying to get information.
Right. Well, in talking to Dennis Lindsay about it, he historically has not involved, but he also referred to the fact similar to other projects we have in front of us now. The addition of the second tower and the concern of the residents in the hills of Goshen about their water supply.
Right.
Perhaps.
This doesn't tie into their water supply.
But you and I know that.
Well, we have to explain that to them.
Sometimes people don't want to listen, though. And,
Okay, I think I explained to them. It's not tied into your water supply, and by the way, you're going to have fire protection. In an emergency, by the way, we can hook in and save your bacon if we need to.
and you hope that was done at the time, but apparently there's some concern.
Okay.
The politics of the situation.
So where do we go from here?
We're looking for a resolution.
No, I'm talking about, we're going to do it, can we do one verbally tonight, or do we want to?
It's a question of how much knowledge you need and how comfortable you feel going ahead. I had said, and Dennis was very apologetic about this, in the sense that nothing was he did anything wrong, he just didn't know that you wanted a briefing, and he wasn't aware it was an agenda item. If you notice in his memo, he does indicate that if you want a more formal report,
we could do this at the beginning of January.
I think so.
And we get the formal report.
Yeah. If you want a formal report.
Let's do this, and I think that we need to have Dennis here. I agree with what he's got on here, I agree with the proposal. I just want to make darn sure that we can gain as much knowledge. I can't speak for past boards or past situations, but it appears to me, I don't want to say no-brainer, but it's
correct. And even more emphasis, I want to make it clear that this was, again, Dennis's idea, Dennis's recommendation, which they adopted and took forward, and so he's 100% behind it, but you still...
Now, what would this save you in terms of about the same cost?
Dollars-wise?
Yeah, is it easier?
It's about a wash. It's about a wash, but it's a better engineering solution going forward because you don't have as much energy involved and stuff like that. So.
And you as the engineer, you back it 100%?
Yep.
Okay, very good. All right, I'd like to put this on the work session for our first one.
January 11th?
January 11th. And we'll ask Dennis to come and give us a thumbnail, and then we'll proceed on
that night. You can act on it.
Right, we'll act on it.
George? Yeah, I have a question. I just wanted to ask a couple questions, just for my own edification. Probably people know the answers, and maybe they seem redundant, but anyway, I'll ask them. The hills now have water supply? They're all wells.
The hills of Goshen, which I believe was a 34-lot subdivision, have individual wells and septics.
I see. Okay.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 or 8 lots that have not been developed.
Mhm.
Sizes are much bigger, that's why.
Right, they range